Good afternoon, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Good to see you. Thankfully, the Grand National went ahead yesterday, despite the best efforts of the eco-nutters, or whatever they are, who decided that they could glue themselves to various things and try and disrupt it. I was worried, actually, watching it, that somebody might try and sort of run onto the track, as they did in one of the Grand Prix last year, because they don't seem to have any understanding or any knowledge of what it is they're disrupting. Do you think that this is a kind of watershed moment, though, for horse racing? Because if they can do it to the Grand National, what else can they do?
I mean, yeah, it's yeah. I was actually there because we had a couple of runners in it over from Ireland, and yeah, at the time you knew something was going to happen, and when it did, and I did actually say at the time to a couple of people that all it's going to take is one person to get in front of a fence when there's 40 horses hurtling down. Dangerous for horses and the person doing it.
Right, exactly right. And this is the trouble, you know, they don't seem to understand what it is they're doing. I mean, I've had a couple of calls today from people saying, oh, you know, maybe we should not do away with the National, but make it into a flat race, make it into 20 horses instead of 40. You know, there's a sort of fundamental misunderstanding, isn't there, out there by a lot of people who don't really know what horse racing is all about.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, I think basically over the last... I mean, when I won it in '88, the fences were they were a lot bigger. Yeah. They were a lot more daunting. You know, there was always 40 runners. You know, and I used to feel at the time, yeah, it was a great spectacle. But you know, because of health and safety and the public's perception, the BHA and the Jockey Club have done everything over the last 15 years to make it as safe as possible. And what we got to remember is there were actually only 4 fallers in the race on Saturday, right? But there was 11 horses that unseated their riders, so they didn't actually fall. So there were only 4 fallers, and you know, I walked the track because my son rode in the race. He was actually one of the fallers at the second, and I walked the track with him beforehand. And the difference between, you know, 20 years ago and 25 years ago compared to now, they are a lot more sort of friendly for horses.
Yes, but it wasn't any more, if you want to use the word, dangerous back then. I mean, it might have appeared to be, but in terms of, say, the casualties of the numbers of horses that would have had to be put down, they weren't any more. It wasn't more dangerous for horses, even though it was more arduous as a ride, right?
No, not at all. And you know, I think, yeah, you probably rode it a lot different back in those days because, you know, with the drops they had over beaches. I mean, you look at beaches now, when they jump it, you actually don't even realise that they've jumped beaches. Right. So, you know, every time I watch it, but you always did know back in the day. But as I said, you know, with everything the way it is, with especially with all these, you know, animal lovers, and we all love animals, but, you know, they had to do something to make it safer and a lot easier.
Right. But, I mean, will the Jockey Club take this as something that they need to take account of? Will the horse racing authorities look into what they need to do to kind of... Because the problem for me with a lot of these people is like with Extinction Rebellion, they ended up getting invited into the House of Commons to meet Michael Gove to talk about how we could reduce our carbon footprint, you know, despite the fact that most of them wouldn't know a carbon footprint if they fell over one, you know, and they're just basically these kind of out-of-work students, long-haired hippies, and I'm sorry to you know, tar them all with that brush, but that's kind of what they are. They don't understand the welfare of the horses. I mean, it turns out that the trainer of Hill 16, who did die as a result of the race, I mean, the trainer's saying it was probably due to the fact that the race was delayed.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, it was, you know, we were in the paddock, and these horses were tacked up with saddles and lead weights on the back, and especially like one of the favourites, Annie Second Now, who'd been second in it last year, and you know, he was carrying 11 stone 12. So instead of walking around for 20 minutes with that on his back, you know, he had to walk around for 45 minutes. Yeah. So you know, that's more stress for a horse. Most of the horses, in all fairness, they were taken to the pre-parade ring, some back to the stables, and the majority of them were fine. But you know, Sandy Thompson has said that his horse got wound up. There was always a parade before the races, so the horses get out there, they walk, they're kept relaxed. You know, the girls and the lads who know them, they walk around the start. But on Saturday, they had to rush out of the paddock, rush down to the start, and then rush the start, and that just didn't help.
No, of course. So, I mean, what's the community of people like yourself saying today I mean, obviously, you know, there will be flat races. I mean, I was at Ascot once on a flat race where a horse died. It happens. It's one of those things, but it's not something that happens an awful lot considering how many races there are. Is it a price? I mean, it's the wrong question, really, but I mean, is it just a price that you pay for being in that business?
I mean, I think it is. I think it's in every sport you're in, whether it's motor racing, whether it's, you know, horse racing, you know, athletes running. You know, I'm afraid accidents are going to happen. And, you know, we've had horses who you bring back from the races, you turn them out in the field, they come back in with an injury after being kicked or fallen in the field or going through a railing or something. And I'm afraid, you know, it's going to happen. And whether it's flat racing or not. But the one thing I will say is that in the last 15 years, that the fatalities on the race courses have actually dropped to 0.2%, which is, you know, we don't want any, but it is going to happen. But I think for dropping to 0.2%, you can see that everybody is doing everything in their power. You know, the race courses are made safer, the ground is looked after well, there's plastic railings up in case a horse goes through them. So everything that's done, or everything that can be done, is being done.
Yeah. Do you see any sort of peril for the future of the Grand National because of this?
I mean, I remember years ago we did, and then I think Red Rum came along, and you know, he sort of, I think a horse like him saved the National after winning it that many times. You know, I spent 3 days up at Aintree again this year, and I've gone there sort of most years since I started riding and then training. And you know, everybody you see up there, they love the race, the crowds that were there. But, you know, these people, they're targeting the National. But as you said, these things happen at Taunton, Wincanton, you know, in Ireland, at Kilbeggan, Ballinrobe, you name it, everywhere. These things happen. But as I said, you know, the horses get the best care and attention. We do everything to minimise the risks of injury. It is going to happen. And if that's the case, if they want racing stopped, I don't think they just want the National stopped. They actually want horse racing stopped.
Well, this is it. I mean, I'm speaking to a caller today who said, well, maybe you know, they should just stop the National. And I said, well, no, because if you give these people an inch, they'll take a mile. They'll want to take a mile, and they'll think that's some kind of victory. And then they'll just march on to try and get the Cheltenham Festival cancelled, and they'll try and get Ascot cancelled, and they'll just keep going.
Yep, and then I think there's, you know, in Britain alone, there's probably 50,000 thoroughbreds. So what do we do? Find them fields to go out in? No, there's not enough. They just want to see them out in the wilds, like deer, rabbits, hares. So we turn them all out, let them run down the motorways, and then see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.